Perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to New Heart Healing Together. And today our guest is named Teresa. So we're just going to have her do a brief introduction and we'll go from there.
Hello, Will. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to talk with you. And um, well, you and I met on Discord, which seems to be the not only the new way, but I've met some of the most interesting people through podcasts, through speaker spaces, and through places like Discord. So I'm a sommelier in the wine industry, wine and food industry by trade. I am um, navigating the world in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and doing a lot of it online, even though the pandemic, the last three and a half years, I have been very much in person, and I had to segue my company and myself into virtual wine concierge by way of being online. So um, I find myself single in the city with family members that are strewn across, and great friends with a variety of faiths. Some of my friends are not faith driven like myself. I'm Christian and I had recently come back to my faith. And um, so it's been a very interesting, I've had a lot of conversations with people and have begun co hosting and working towards speaking in spaces like yours.
Awesome. If I would love to hear what your experiences have been and what your perspective has been being in Canada for the past few years, just with all the craziness and what's going on there.
Absolutely. It is it's very interesting because I, as a Canadian, I've always been proud to be Canadian. And the last 3+ years has thrown us into probably one of the first. Yeah, we're a young country. Let's put it that way. We are a very young country with, not even with over just 100 years, 125 years to us. And the pandemic, of course, it created divisiveness. It created speaking up. It created more protests than I think I've ever seen from not from a variety um, of genres, from a variety of industries, and we're very sustainable minded. I'm sitting actually looking out, and our city has grown exponentially. We had a new mayor come in October, and we've got FIFA 2026 that we had won part of the bid for. So it's vastly interesting to come out of a pandemic whereby the we had entire industries shut down, the entire tourism industry, the entire film industry, the hospitality industry, tech, and finance, and that was able to keep going. Real estate went through vast changes, and the healthcare industry, we have seen, unfortunately, I've seen firsthand that the healthcare industry in Canada itself is not only broken, but going into a pandemic whereby we became isolated and we went online, or we didn't have our jobs. We had to go back to school. We had to find different ways to make money. Um, government, um, with regards to government benefits, all kinds of things for businesses and people. It then has really um, created a lot of discussion about how, as we come out of it, how healthy our youth is, how healthy our economy is, and how do we forge ahead with this future that has jettisoned, 10 years, 10 light years ahead of us with AI and with sustainability and green and climate change and fires and droughts. And, you name it. So that's in a quick synopsis. That for
Yeah,
me is really Canada is divisive, and yet we have pockets of community so that we can find our tribes again. I always say we vibe with our tribe. So that's
absolutely.
yeah, that's where I feel it's at.
You know, and I think one big backfire from the pandemic is that it gave a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people took the time of isolation and being able to have that time to think in solitude, to
Mhm.
reflect, to process, and to really start asking deep questions. It's
Yes.
almost like before the pandemic, we were all just in a haze and a party, and everyone's starting to sober up now,
Yes.
and really look at what's going on. And I think it also brought a lot of the corruption and a lot like the true colors of the governments to the surface as well.
Very much in terms I think that if I could say anything that needs to be taught in not only in schools but in homes is not only we're hearing a lot about critical thinking, which is incredibly important. We need basics of economics learned. We need if I had children of my own, I don't, but I really see the need and the value of teaching children that um, government is business. And while government bodies say, we are doing this for the greater good of Canada, we support Canadians, we're there, we're here for you, we have you. The reality is every single government in the world, no matter what denomination, as it were, no matter what faction or side it's on, it is a business, and it's only a viable. Its business is only as good as its balance sheet, and our governments, as we have seen, and not just the pandemic, but if we were to look historically, I mean, what the world has gone through in the '08 to 2010, like the global financial crisis, and then in a way now what we've been going through in 2023 is really similar to what we were going through in the 1970s. And um, the Canadian dollar is something that has ebbed and flowed comparative to the USD. And um, the fact that Canadians not only have to stretch their dollar even more, but now that we're finding coming out of this pandemic, um, due to, this is where I do say, due to governments doing or not doing certain, uh, taking certain steps, then, for example, the grocery, like food costs, a person's grocery bill has gone exponentially, and food is crucial. As far as I know, there's none of us that can live on sunlight and air yet, and to see that, oh, we get a grocery rebate, this one-time thing whereby the reality is the grocers actually fixed the pricing, which increased. And then they were able to utilize the pandemic as a way of further increasing and all of that. And it's like, at what point does the government say that, okay, this one time, for example, today in Canada, we received yesterday into our bank accounts a one-time grocery rebate, which is nice, but it's not enough for where Canada is right now. I think I hear, oh, we're going into recession. Oh, we're not. When you see crime that we're seeing, when you see um, the drug problems that we're having, when you see the mental illness difficulties that we're having, and they're not being addressed. And again, this is just British Columbia. This isn't, when I go across Canada, each province is different and each province has their pros and cons. And we have wildfires that are gosh, they're unprecedented, whereby, you have Halifax that had no idea and was not really prepared, and you've got firefighters coming from Europe, and in Alberta, you've got firefighters coming from South Africa. So Canada to me, had always been a country where I was not only proud, we've been a top powerhouse country. And last year, um, the Canada dropped out of the top 10 of the oh, it's a particular index of it's out of my brain right at the moment, which is a shame,
Right.
but it's dropped out of the top 10 with regards to um, peacekeeping, like being
Quality of life.
thank you. Interestingly enough, Vancouver, they do say Vancouver has one of the highest, quality of life. Well, it does because we pay for it. We pay dearly in our taxes. We pay dearly for property. Um, I know for a fact I was speaking with people that are in New York and um, and California, and that and our real estate prices are through the roof. In fact, a very well-known realtor had come up from LA, and he said the prices in Vancouver are exponentially higher than they are in California. He was quite surprised.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's we I do I am proud to be Canadian. I also see that we have um, we're we have our problems and issues. And being that we're part of the G7 and the G20, we, the fact if we cannot take care of our own in our own country, and if we are fighting battles within province to province, then how can we truly be regarded as a top peacekeeper in other countries? Not to say that we're not, because we've always been known as being more of a peacekeeping country.
Yeah.
We've always been known as being polite and good and all that. And we have we have great values. It's just that we're seeing people who have not had their voice heard, or, as you say, with the pandemic, we didn't incur as severe lockdowns as other countries such as Australia and New Zealand. However, they were uh, they were almost as detrimental, if not more, because handing people money out from the government by way of CERB, and which wasn't enough to pay your rent or your bills and all of that, and kind of being left to flounder was very, very frustrating. So I've seen a lot of people change careers out of hospitality into other areas. I've
And a
seen
lot of
burn.
small businesses have been shut down too, right?
They have the Restaurant Canada stated that by the end of 2023, about 75 to 80% of businesses in their sector will have shut down.
Wow.
Now, yeah, and it's sizable. I was just speaking with a friend who's been in the industry for, oh gosh, she's been in the industry for 20, 30 years easily. And she was saying how I had noticed the food trucks that are out, they're out in droves again. And she was saying that, it's interesting, tipping has changed. People who they aren't tipping as much, and people are going out for lunch instead of out for dinner to a restaurant. We're seeing, you know, Cactus Club that's not as busy as it used to be. We're, like you say, we're seeing restaurants and or businesses, storefronts closing. I see in my mom's area, which is it's called the West End, and one of the Chinese restaurants, they brought in one of the robots that is basically it helps to serve and clear plates. and they went from a Chinese restaurant to a Chinese and Indian restaurant to try and maximize what they are offering in order to stay afloat.
Wow.
Mhm. So it's interesting times because we're seeing again the hospitality sector is um, we're just coming back on board. So cruise ships, we have record number of cruise ships that are coming in. That being said, the people who are on the cruises, their spending habits are different than they used to be. The hotels here, I know I've spoken with many people, and an average hotel in the city, it starts at about $400 a night. And it's not unheard of for somewhere between 800 and $1,000 per night Canadian, which is not for the faint of heart, because I know some people who, when you're making $22 an hour and you're not getting tipped, is that a living wage anymore? So
Yeah. I mean, this inflation is just another form of robbery. Um,
yes.
they have all the hard assets, all the solid stuff. And I mean, the way I see it, they have so much money that they don't even care about making money anymore. It's more about us not having money now. It's more about the power aspect, I think.
It's
Now that
it's
they have a
definitely
certain level of control.
no, we definitely we have a shift. We are seeing a shift. And do you find that it's a shift that's happening in North America specifically, or do you find and feel that it's a shift that's happening worldwide?
Well, it definitely is a shift worldwide, but I would say Canada and the US are so close and so similar that we have our own shift, I feel like, and
Hmm.
the Western Europe countries have their own shift.
Yes.
South America, like all these countries that they're going through their own geographical shifts.
We definitely are seeing a geopolitical change of the chess, but like the game of chess in geopolitics of the world. We are seeing a shift entirely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And can I ask, has there been religious crackdown or but like that Christian belief background or crackdown or just any
And
spiritual beliefs in Canada?
interesting is, so in Canada, it's, as I think as everyone has seen around the world, it's hard to have not seen the Freedom Convoy, because that
Yeah.
going to Ottawa, that then jettisoned around the world. Um, we have things like the pipelines, we have things like fracking and all of that, in terms of, so again, I always look at it economically and or sustainably, then leads to government parties and or um, people with regards to their what their values, what their passions are, with regards to religious factions, because in British Columbia, I mean, we have a melting pot of sorts. I don't know if I'm using that terminology really correctly, but we have an Asian population, we have Persian population, we have an East Indian population, and again also with Afghan, like, immigration and all of that. I do feel that immigration is important when a country is not populating their birth rate. Like, birth rates are declining everywhere. So when it comes to spiritual and Christian and or pardon me, religious factions, I do find that the churches have not really spoken up in Canada, other than, we again, because we're a young country, and the day that Truth and Reconciliation really came to the forefront, um, with the unmarked grave and all of that that has happened since. I've been a sommelier at a resort that is on not only Indigenous land, it's in the UNESCO biosphere. So I have a very unique perspective because I have spent many years with different tribes in terms of working with and seeing First Nations from their point of view. So I really have a belief that similarly, if I want to learn about Buddhism, then I speak with the Buddha. If I want to learn about the Baha'i faith, I have a friend who he put his daughter through Baha'i. I have spoken with atheists. I am Christian myself. I have Catholic friends, and I really do my best to speak to people themselves instead of relying on the news or relying on whatever
The
information.
institutions.
Exactly. And in that regard, that's something that um, I I see in Canada because of Meta uh, cracking down in terms of Meta and Google have removed news from their platforms, and Twitter has become a quote unquote news source. Um, it's vastly interesting because we are in the midst of a return to community, whereby it's our church, our neighbors, our local markets, all of that. It's important that we speak with everyone. And interestingly enough, though, it's that regression that when we had it originally, because again, life ebbs and flows. But if we were in Italy and I was down in Calabria, then I would not know of the food and the wine and all that that's up in the Veneto necessarily, because I would be eating and drinking regionally. I would be, I would have married into family that was from that area, and I would all my friends and my work and all of that. And that's how and why we started traveling, and we started moving, and we started migrating. So my viewpoint is, interestingly enough, that the pandemic, because it created it's really the first time since Babylon that we were all repatriated to our homeland. And it's a topic, it's a subject that I don't know that a lot of spiritual leaders or spiritual people have talked about at all yet, which I think would be very interesting because um, the Tower of Babel and Babylon itself, as I say, when Canada on March 17th, when we were all called home, as it were, as was every other country. It was basically a call across the world that was okay, come home, because we don't know what this is. The only thing that we know is that you are our citizens, and so we call you home. And the only country that does that um, in terms of Israel, as I'm not myself, but my stepchildren are. So I learned about Judaism, and a friend of mine, he lives in Canada, but his family is Israeli, and they're one of the only countries that um, you are their citizen, in terms it's your home no matter who and what and where, whereas Canada called everyone back home. So by calling everyone back home, then it's very interesting because I see um, I see a disconnect with regards to when we were called home and we didn't know what this was, and the pandemic, it went on, and we had to establish guidelines and take care of each other and take care of ourselves and all of that. And now that the world is opened wide, um, I don't think that the onboarding of of the of the opening up of Canada was really thought of or done well, if that makes sense to you at all.
No, it definitely does. And to kind of shift gears a little bit, I would love
Mm-hmm.
to hear, because you have so many different spiritual like perspectives. I've been
Mm-hmm.
studying as many perspectives as well, because I feel like that's how you get the best view, is by looking at all the different viewpoints and not just keeping yourself in one box. Uh,
Yes.
and I would love to hear what do you believe, in all your experiences and all your learning from
Mm-hmm.
others,
Mm,
connects. What is the same throughout all the spiritual practices and beliefs? What are the deep core similarities?
that is an excellent question. Um, well, faith in itself, in terms of faith as a way of being, even even an atheist or agnostic has faith in what they believe in their core, and that comes back to source. So whatever God, whatever Lord, whatever name
Well, in
that.
every religion and spiritual
Mhm,
belief, they all do
mhm,
believe in God, and some
all.
level.
Mhm,
Yeah. I mean, in
all. Mhm,
Buddhism, they call it the original chi.
mhm,
And uh, the Native American or the indigenous beliefs, they have the Great Spirit, and
yes.
so on and so on and so on. Even Tesla, you can argue that ether energy, that 0 point energy, is the same description as the
Mhm,
original chi and all these other things. So that's a
absolutely.
complete commonality.
It truly, truly is. And in that regard, I always try to look for silver linings in things. And one thing that the pandemic cracked open for us is the interconnectedness of us all. I remember saying, we're not getting out of this until everyone gets out of this. And what I meant by that was, it's one of the more unique times in humans' history. And we've had them before with the Black Plague and other things. We'll have them again, you know. However, globally, with us sitting at going from 7 billion to over 8 billion people during that time, and also at the same time losing losing loved ones, losing jobs, losing ourselves, the the commonality is we all, as beings, because I do think that I do say we are a spirit having a human being experience. um
Absolutely. 100%.
and yeah, and the silver lining and the beautiful part of it all is we collectively are are closer than I believe in previous times to elevating our frequency and our energy. Um, I
Yeah,
very
because we
much.
all
Mhm,
went through the same thing. I've been saying that
exactly.
the whole time as well. Yeah, we're all closer
Hmm.
to being united, and especially
Exactly.
once the corruption is rooted out and cast out, we'll all have that shared experience of what we all went through together. I
Ex-
completely agree.
yeah, because in fact, the solfeggio frequencies are something that I not only listen to. It's very interesting, but because it's kind of a segue, and yet it comes back to spirituality and to each of us, and like source and void and creation, and what ties us all together is that um, I saw it was a social media thing, and it said fabrics contain frequency in themselves. So linen and organic cotton contain the frequency of a person's body, of the earth. It's 100
You know,
megahertz, I believe it is.
I've switched over to wearing organic cotton clothes. Yeah,
Hmm.
and then the fabric that they have us, the artificial fabrics they have us
Mhm.
where it has that very, very low damaging frequency. It leaves microplastics in your body as well. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, it's a huge,
Yeah,
you feel the difference when you wear it. You do.
you do. And again, that goes back to with the pandemic where we have um I'll use Vancouver in terms of 2030. We had Vision 2020 and we have Vision 2030. Um, we're set to want to be the greenest community, greenest province, greenest country. And again, it's worldwide. We are seeing not only that climate change is real, we are seeing that the temperatures are increasing. And for most of us, I think we now really believe and understand Earth goes through ebbs and flows, just the same as humans do in terms of, so the commonality as well, as you were saying, is that in every religion or people who do not believe in religion, we all have ebbs and flows. We all have the ups and downs and the yin and yang, and it's a necessary part of life because if we didn't have one, we wouldn't understand and appreciate the other. And when we understand and appreciate the other, like loving a sunrise or a sunset just because, then we also wouldn't miss it. And when we were in those downward negative frequencies, we wouldn't have hopefulness and hope to rise out of it, so that we're not stuck in it. Because I really do believe, um, we see now from, as I say, the pandemic. It's not that it's the only thing, but it shone such a light on things like toxic paint or the furniture one buys, the filtration of air. For us, I really believe in plants and nature, and living walls in offices and homes have come really important because trees talk to one another. Plants emit a vibration. Mushrooms. There's a woman that I know that she puts a microphone on, and
It plays the
the
music.
yes, of
Yeah.
not only the trees but mushrooms, and mushrooms have a different frequency, and so it's really, really incredible that way. So again, I always do my best to go back to, we vibe with our tribe and we have a chance to, with our voice and our authenticity of who we are is really important um, to speak clearly and to speak, how do I put it? To speak respectfully. The language we use towards ourselves and the language that we use towards others becomes the experiences that we have. And so we can rise up. We can not like how certain things are. And I'm a big believer in, I don't, if I'm going to war, then how different am I from my opponents that I'm fighting? Whereas when I promote peace, when I promote compassion and understanding, and when I promote compromise and
Right.
improvement, and
It's like
that,
that
mhm,
Buddhism. It's like that Buddhism
yes,
thing where having hate is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. Whatever you
I,
experience, whatever you think and put out, you're experiencing
yes,
that as well. So it's
it,
on your spirit, it's on you as well.
it is. And you bring up a really good point because interestingly enough, because I have become so in tune with myself. With all of us through the pandemic, two things happened. We went inward, like you say, because we had we were isolated. We had to depend or fend for ourselves, and we also learned that we need each other, and we need that for two reasons. We need to be validated and heard and helped, and we need to do that for others as well, because it's what our soul calls us to do. My soul, my soul's purpose is to add to the world in a good way. My soul's purpose is to learn my lessons and gravitate upward through them so that I can leave the world a little happier, a little brighter for children and grandchildren of other people. Even though I don't have children of my own, being a step parent, I very much understand that, you know, they're going to grow up and they're going to be taking care of us one day. So in
I
in
think a good way
that,
of describing it is it's a
mhm,
symbiotic relationship where when you help other people and they feel better, it makes you feel
yes,
better because they're feeling the higher frequencies and that's going outward. So you're going to feel their higher frequencies. And it's a pinball effect where it just bounces off everywhere.
it
Uh,
is. You encapsulated that so well, and because I'm curious with everything that you're learning and experiencing, because I know for myself I'm much more in tune and I can understand and feel not only frequencies, but I see that when we choose to hold on, like you were saying, holding on to anger is not only like drinking poison ourselves, it also, though, it goes out in vibration to the world, but most specifically to the person that we have that against. And the reality is, when we're angry with someone, it's really just ourself, our shadow that we are grappling with. That there's
Absolutely.
parts,
Yeah.
yeah, there's parts of us that we either don't like or haven't wanted to look at. And our shadow part, it's not all bad either. It's not all, our shadow part is necessary, just as the moon is important for the sun. We have the moon and the sun for that particular reason. We need both of them. So,
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off for just a second. We have less than a minute left before it times out.
absolutely.
So we're just gonna restart the Zoom call and we'll keep going because I'm
Okay.
definitely into this.
Okay. Fantastic. Thanks,
Okay,
Will.
give me one
Okay.
second. Going back to what we were saying, what you said before really made me think that not only does being hateful and pushing drinking that poison do it to the person you're against and yourself, but also
Mhm.
the people that you're the most connected with. So it
Ah,
poisons your
yes.
tribe as well because you
Yes.
have that connection. And that's something I don't hear very often in spiritual people or communities is
Mhm.
secondhand built like negative muck and secondhand spirituality just from
Right.
interacting and being in places, the energies from the different places you go to, all of
Mhm.
that, it does matter.
It it very much matters for many reasons. I am delving much more into spiritual warfare than I ever used to. I put on the armor of God each day, and um, each day I learn more about it. Each day I delve more correctly to it, because we are humans and we are not gods. We can be godlike at times. We can be heroes.
There's a
We
distinction. We're God's children. Yeah. And people,
exactly,
a lot of the
yes.
spiritual people that they're having trouble with that distinction because they will either
Mhm,
take it too far one direction, thinking they're gods, or
mhm,
too far the other direction, just humans. And there
mhm.
there is that middle ground. And there's that clear separation where
Yes,
it's like we're just baby sparks in a giant ocean. I mean, our
I love
spirits are very
that.
yeah, giant ocean of light. I've actually, that's so funny because I've been doing spiritual warfare. I've been guided into that for the past three
Mm,
and a half years, and it's been
okay.
quite a journey. It's not easy.
I
Uh,
I know, no, I would say it's not for the faint of heart, and at the
no,
same time, I'm like, well, it's it, none of us none of us know when we're going to be called to it, and in that regard, I realize now that every single one of us actually, um, we are called to that. We just, a lot of the time in youth, we do not realize because we are God's children and we have only light within us. And
Yeah.
it's the environment, it's the adversities, it's the negativities, it's all of that. In fact, Marissa Peer is a wonderful woman that she has been doing RTT, which is rapid transformational therapy, for over 30 years. And she's the one who says, she's like, our lives come down to two things: the language that we use and the pictures we make in our head. And that is our connection to source. So no matter what religion, no matter what spiritual practice one has, our first practice is with ourselves. And therefore, our first practice is with God, because God is within us. Whether you call it universe, source, Allah, no matter what, the the dogma is so different from the actual
Yes.
spirituality of it.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I have I see this very much, this time period, very much right now as a call to action, a call to arms, by way of, you mentioned something about the people closest to us. And I find it really interesting because I I lost the love of my life by way of, um, he's still very much on this earth. He just, his perception and his way of being.
You guys diverged too much.
Yeah, well, yes and no. There were conflicts happening. It was COVID, and we'd spent 288 days out of 365 together, and that's a lot of days when you're a year into a relationship, when you've never known each other before, and you feel like you're connected spiritually, you feel like you're
Right.
connected energetically. So, from a human experience, and the majority of humans would say, oh, it's too much and this and that. From a spiritual experience, that's, you're just beginning to really understand and know. And what I learned, what I have gleaned and learned, is similar to where we were talking about the poison and how we end up, it not only just poisons ourselves by way of anger. Um, Now I see, when we come
Indulge.
from negative, yeah, when we indulge and when we come from negativity and low frequency, we put that out into the world as waves, just the same as our voices are coming back and forth to us on frequency, right? It's no different than radio signals, as they say, and our thoughts and our feelings and all of that. And I've noticed that my intuition has become more honed since the pandemic, because I went inward, because I had I was isolated, and then because I also then found one of my tribe, and we vibed so much, and the outside world didn't have the same understanding of that. And sometimes it doesn't matter what everyone else or anyone else thinks. People need to be authentic to themselves, and that I see is a shift that is happening monumentally as well. And that, by that I mean, getting back to our conversation where we were saying, and it's not about kiboshing governments per se. It's just saying, when you have protests, when you have people going in and burning buildings or toppling monuments, or in the streets fighting for needing food, or the ATMs are closed, like, I our world, we have seen a lot in 3.5 years, and our ancestors, have gone through it historically. It's just we seem to be going through it at a much faster rate, whereby it's not enough to know, we have to know how, and we have to, well, we can do whatever we wish. Free will is becoming more and more apparent and more requested or stated, that this is who I am and I have free will and I'm going to choose to exert it, which is why we are seeing the clashes that we are, which is why we are seeing seeing things like the Rogers network go down. For example, in terms of the internet go down. And so, say if you and I are on this call, and if I was on Rogers, then it not only goes out, but um, with my mom right now with a health issue, if I needed to have called an ambulance, I couldn't have even called 911 because the entire network is down. And so, as humans, we are relying on this digital frequency of the world to communicate, whereby I, as a human, I am doing my part to hone and to learn not only my intuitive, but my communicative and my community, so that I am still vibing with my tribe, and so that I know how to navigate the world easily, even when systems go down. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something they should be teaching that in schools. That's something every
Hmm.
person should be learning. Um, Alternative medicine, even
Hmm. Yes.
spiritual healing, and the healing from plants, all the different area chiropractors, even.
Yes.
We're way too reliant on these institutions. And
Hmm.
there's so much I want to respond with all that you said. Uh,
Hmm.
I want to go back to that one thing that you talked about where we are all light. And
Yes.
we talked about like being expressing yourself authentically. One problem
Hmm.
is that a lot of people, they don't even know who they are. And so how can you express yourself authentically if you don't even know who you are?
It's
Um,
true.
we have so much buildup of negativity, like exactly you said, we're being polluted in every direction from negativity. All the people's struggles, all the thoughts and stuff that they're putting out, it's bogging people down, it's affecting us. And
Yes.
that's what I've been on in my journey, is just trying to clear out every last bit of it, to just be that light completely without any of the darkness, just cutting it all off and clearing it out. And that's been a
Hmm.
crazy journey. um but when you go through that, when you separate, okay, fear, that's not me. So you just separate it out. And the more you separate it, anger, hatred, all that
Hmm.
stuff, it just goes away completely. You don't feel any of it. It's
That's
incredible process. Yeah.
I very much agree. And it's like you say, like the word light. I was just thinking about it as you were talking, because the picture that I got from what you were saying, to recap or to kind of say it, I always try and re-encapsulate what someone has said. And I got this picture of not just light as in a light bulb, right? The incandescence, the brightness. Also, as you said, that then provides a lightness of being, a freshness and a buoyancy, whereby we're lifted up toward God, towards source, toward the light. And it is so euphoric in itself. It's it's almost better than any drug that anyone has
You never
ever
go
or
back.
never had.
You'll never
Exactly.
go back. Yeah.
No, why would you want to?
Exactly what you said about feeling light, though, is in doing that, like just clearing it out with God, just letting him clear out the different negativity stuff.
Hmm.
It's cleared out every last bit of tension in my body. I still have some bits left. I'm clearing each
Mm.
and every day. And it's like I'm physically getting lighter and lighter. It's like when you that feeling when you're on vacation and you have no cares in the world and you feel light and carefree. That's how we all should be feeling all the time. It's boggling to see that the drastic difference.
Yes,
How I mean, and people even talk about that. I have this heavy weight on my chest. I mean, they talk that you hear the symptoms or the signs and people and how they talk, but they aren't seeing the picture though.
exactly. And this is it's where it's very interesting because the saying you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Is so very true, whereby understanding and being compassionate to someone else's journey, not only not being the same. I was talking with the gentleman of just I it's not my place to judge. Like it took me a long time. I am a judge. I have to say, I have to be honest enough with myself to say, I'm a human. Therefore, of course, I was raised to be judgmental because I've been judged and I bristle at being judged. So I then know when I am being judgmental, then I pause and I remember that our Lord is like each of us, including myself, will be judged at a time. But I don't wear robes. I didn't choose a career as a judge in the court, and I'm not a judge in the spiritual
Right.
or faith realm. And so therefore it's really interesting because it allows me to then I sit back and I'm like, okay, I may not agree with this person. Can I be curious enough to ask questions? And can I be curious enough and can I be mature? Can I be emotionally mature enough to accept a, a very different opinion, to accept something that is incongruent to the way I think and feel without getting mad, without um, imposing my ways or needs on someone else, because sovereignty is our right. And I believe is what each of us is quote unquote fighting for. When I see people who are struggling or who are fighting or whatever it is, and I've been that way, I get on my soapbox, and there's times when I am very emphatic. And some people have said, don't be so emotional, or you're too sensitive, or whatever. And I'm like, and I used to not only used to take it to heart, now I actually embrace that because I go, you know what? I am. I am too emotional, and that's okay because that's how I'm built. I'm pragmatic as well. I'm not too pragmatic because if I was too pragmatic, I would be a robot. And as it is, we have AI in the world. We, in fact, in the spiritual world, I believe it was in Dusseldorf over the last weeks, a theologian student created a sermon via chat GPT, and hundreds lined up to hear the sermon. And they said, the sermon was correct, was what they would think and expect. They said it lacked the human quality, it lacked the spirit, it lacked the personalization. And
Hollow.
that's just it. It's hollow. It's because we are the ones that are creating AI. And the output of AI can only imitate or can only be at the level that we input it. So we can choose to, fear the way I do my best because I previously, and as you say, with regards to spiritual and religion and spiritual warfare, fear is something that happens to all of us. And Face Everything and Rise is the acronym that I continue to put in my mind because I had been the other way for so many years. And I realized if I want to effect change in my life, which then affects change in my families, my communities, the worlds, then I need to, again, I go within and I bring the light from within me and raise that by way of facing everything.
Absolutely. I love that.
Mhm. So yes, it's again, I can very much appreciate your not curiosity isn't the right word. Um, what you are doing by way of your podcast, by way just of us meeting, right? It's serendipitous and it's fantastic to have a conversation
Oh, I could
whereby
talk to you for hours and hours. Absolutely, 100%.
that's just it. It's we learn from each other and we create better dialogue. We create more, not
Oh
only more
yeah, that's
questions,
why I
but
wanted to
more answers. Hmm.
100%. And that's what I wanted to say to you earlier is what you were talking about earlier. Everyone does have the right to their own journey. That's something
Yes,
that God taught me as well. It's something a lesson everyone has to go through is recognizing that and appreciating that other people are different, and that's okay. If we all were the
absolutely.
same, we would just be robots. There wouldn't be a difference. What would be the point? Um,
That's just it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Um, I I think it's well, for one, we are the ones that brought AI into being. And it wasn't just last year, and it wasn't because of the pandemic. The pandemic sped everything up by a decade. The pandemic jettisoned us 10 years ahead of what we would have been seeing and doing by way of our fear of an invisible virus, which and I don't use that I don't say any of that lightly because
Right.
every single person has been affected, some adversely, some benefited. Um, and the people that have lost and the people that have gone through adversity, I say that and I mean that with all of the care and humbleness for the fact of um, nobody nobody expected this to just come about, and that's just it. AI has been we've been accepting it slowly. A dear friend used the analogy of the frog
The
when you put
boiling
a
pot. Yeah.
yes, and I see that um, we all need to really be
Jump out of the
mindful.
pot.
Yeah, we need to be mindful of that temperature raising just incrementally where we're comfortable in it. And we're so comfortable that we then expire from it's not dissimilar to climate change. Whereas, yeah, basically the we're finding very much this year, for example, with droughts and with fires and all of that, that we are the frog jumping out of the pot very quickly and having to be resilient and having to ask for help when we sometimes have felt like we can do it on our own, as well as offering out our hand to help other people, whereby it's there's no other reason than we just do it. Because I will say I am noticing we there is a change in the world now as well, whereby the um, it used to be, oh, Mary, can I borrow a cup of sugar? And you'd literally it would be across the windows or whatever, and oh, hey, I've got my lawnmower, and Billy can use it to mow your lawn. Now everything is becoming pay to play. People are monetizing the value of helping by
They're
way of,
they're even monetizing spirituality.
yes.
Corporatizing it. You see so many spiritual healers that charge like hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get a session. It's outrageous.
Hmm.
And it's
That's
like,
just it.
it's lessons. It's, it's energy that doesn't come from them. It's all this stuff that's so sacred. And they're treating it like it's, I don't know, like it's just a hospital or just a regular medical field. It's crazy.
That's just it. And it exactly, and it's like you say, spiritualism, health, just breathing is, water is all monetized so much. And again, that's where it really does get back to, we are, while we have been jettisoned 20, or pardon me, 10 years into the future, at the time that was 3.5 years. So I mean, we're going light years ahead with regards to AI, and what we are utilizing it for, and what we are then putting it, educating it to be. And as well, I find we have regressed at, I would say, close to 100 years, by way of communities in that, because
And morals too.
very much so, morals and values. And it's, it, 100 or more years ago, it wasn't just hard for women. In terms, as a female, I have been raised by women who are pioneers, who were pioneers. My grandmother was the first female audiologist in Ontario. My grandmother wore um, wore pants to school. One day when girls had to wear skirts, it was mandatory. And so I've come from a family whereby females have, spoken up and spoken their voice. And when we go back 100 years ago, it wasn't just women that had a hard life in terms of, you know, farmers. Um, try being a farmer for a day or a week, and the getting up at before dawn, and you've got chickens and cows, and you've got crops, and that is the difference between your family eating and surviving, and sending your children to school or not. And as much as we have, wonderful, we're incredibly fortunate in North America, incredibly fortunate. We also are seeing a wider divide. We are seeing more people going to a food bank than ever before. We are seeing more people who are availing themselves of counseling, and or for themselves, and or for their mom, their dad, their families, their cousins. I have family that has retired from the medical communities, and they're saying, it's not only broken, we have more of a need for it. So interestingly, while we're jettisoning forward, we're also going back into almost this serfdom time.
And yep,
Um,
100%. And
yeah.
whatever technology we have or know about, even, of course, the elites and the crazy rich people, they have technology way more advanced. And that's why I almost say it's almost like we have caveman technology compared to what they have. I mean, with the Tesla stuff alone, they could feed
Hmm.
and clothe every single person on the planet for pennies and pennies on the dollar. Um,
That's just it.
it should not, none of the problems here should be existing. It doesn't make sense. It shouldn't be happening.
No.
And we are devolving backwards through this false sense of comfort and convenience that is really just degrading and killing us, morally and all kinds. I mean, yeah, there's so much to it. But the last thing I wanted to ask you and talk about is,
Hmm.
um, what do you do? What is your experience, and how do you practice spiritual warfare? And what would you like to share with people about
Mm,
that?
thank you so much for asking. Um, I I've come back to my faith, so I do wake up and I pray and I meditate in terms of I one of the first things I wake up and I am grateful to be alive. I forgot that we actually are a miracle that we were born. I cannot remember the stats, but just practicing gratitude first thing in the morning in terms it sets not only my day, it sets the day for all of the people that are within my life and all of the things that come. So I do my best to prepay. I am thankful. I have my conversations with the Lord. I um, I pray. I am back into scripture itself. As I say, I do. Um, it's important for me to learn other other religions, other ways, because that helps to solidify the faith that I have within myself. My family, as in my mom, she has been faithful. She has gone through her challenges, ups and downs, but I've come back to my family and I've repaired, not just repaired, but I've renewed friendships that we had not spoken. And I did that by way of, it's an interesting thing. Forgiveness is forgiveness. And it's not, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just the understanding. Um, and so, and I know I falter. I recognize I'm human. And I recognize in that for me in Christianity, the Lord knows. And the Lord um, Jesus died for my sins, for all of our sins. As I say, that's my belief. And I know in regards to that, that um, I, I'm in service to my faith to be the best that I can be. And I've definitely, as I say, not only gone through challenges, the spiritual warfare that I've gone through, I do put on the armor of God. I am speaking my truth, letting others speak their truth, discerning between wants and needs, and discerning between short term and long term has been a blessing for me because there's times when a person has to prioritize. We all have the same number of minutes in the day. So whether a person likes Warren Buffett or doesn't, whether someone liked Mother Teresa or didn't, they both had the same number of minutes in a day to do what they did, as do all of us. And that is a good reminder for me again that we are all the same. A CEO can become a janitor and a janitor can become a CEO. And neither of those positions defines them. Their inner spirit, their light of being is not only what defines them, um, that's what brings more light to the world. So I do my best. And I would say in closing, it's a funny way to say it, but I pick my blessings. I used to say I pick my battles, and because I'm changing my language in certain ways, I pick my blessings. I choose them and I hold myself accountable for them. And I hope that I not only can put a smile on other people's faces, I revel in the smiles that I do have, the laughs, the humor. I I miss. There's certain people that I miss in my life because I miss the light and the humor, and I hope that one day they come back into my life so I can share that with them again. That's
Absolutely.
me.
And I'm Christian too. And being Christian, it doesn't necessarily mean that you belong to the organized religion of it. You can
No.
follow Jesus Christ without being a part of that. Um,
Hmm.
and what you said about discernment, that's a big lesson I've learned is, like there, especially in this day and age when there's such an abundance of contradictory information, stuff like it's system overload for people. Just
Yes.
letting God be your discernment, letting him guide your intuition, and
Yes.
letting him show you what you need to see instead of just surfing through everything possible and just being in a sea of confusion that we're
Hmm.
seeing a lot of people fall into.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just I have a lot of mirrored
Mm,
experiences with what you said, and I can really appreciate that. I really
amazing.
appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this. Um,
Thank you, Will.
yeah, and I mean with prayers and blessings, people they don't get creative enough with it, I think. Like
Good point.
when I ask God whenever I'm driving around to pray and bless everyone's food and drinks to be free of the chemicals, toxins, to purify it for them.
Hmm.
Just be generous with your prayers and blessings. It's free to give. It doesn't
It
cost you
is.
anything. And spiritual warfare, it's everyone's always complaining about how can we
Hmm.
make a difference? What can we
Hmm.
do? They feel so stuck. That's the
Yeah,
biggest way. That's the most important way that you can make a difference.
it
And that's the
is.
biggest impact you could ever have. It's a different thing because, and I'm sure you understand this, you don't necessarily see the concrete
Mm,
results of what you do a lot of the times. It's
right.
the way I kind of at least got to show me is it's kind of like a butterfly effect. So it'll just have ramifications and stuff maybe halfway around the world you'll never see, but that small difference could have just caused huge waves of shifts somewhere else.
It's not only so true, I'm not sure if you can hear in the background, but what you said is being not only echoed, but it really shows because what you're saying is a butterfly flaps its wings and across the world something happens. And sometimes that's, um, I'm in the hospital because my mom is here. And so I had found a quiet lounge and there's obviously cause for celebration for someone. And when you feel so happy for them that as if it was you that it happened to, it's that those people's prayers and those people's prayers were answered, and they probably had people praying for a hot minute or so. So what you said just resonates so much. It's the creativity, it's the generosity of the prayer and the freeness of it that then it creates lightness, it creates celebration, it creates amazing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean they call it being an empath, but it's really just being in tune. I mean, and a lot of people they see spirituality as power and seeking power and all that. I really just see it as healing and freedom, because
Mhm.
it's just your consciousness and you're just expressing your consciousness. That's
Yes,
really ultimately what spirituality is.
it
Um,
is.
and if you're looking at it through that lens, and when God guides you, you can go as further than you can ever imagine.
You can.
So
With God's guidance, we can. Absolutely. We achieve miracles.